One of the things that you tweeted out that I thought was pretty important and powerful was the ages and the names, but particularly the ages of those killed in the ISIS suicide attack, just to show that almost I'm most people wouldn't think of me as old as all, but I actually am young or older than everybody but one person on this entire list.
Yeah.
And so I'm guessing it's actually the same case for you. And it's absolutely crazy because that means that these people were toddlers just when 9/11 happened at best, like infants and toddlers, right? And
Yeah.
now that they've died in this war. So Will, any comments you have on that? But also, let's talk about the attack because other than the very good correction you gave earlier in the show, when you explained that there was only one bomb, at least according to the U.S. military at this point, because before it had been widely reported there were two. What other possible events happened and what's being reported?
Yeah, sure. So just on the first thing, it's just, yeah, that really is a tragic kind of symbolic thing. Like to see the number of 20-year-olds on this list, people who like, I hope these are some of the last soldiers to die at the tail end of this horribly pointless, disastrous war that we fought here. But some of them, they don't even remember why we're there. They weren't like, maybe they were born on 9/11, but they were way too young to even to remember what happened. And so, this multi-generational war now, it's all been absolutely for nothing. And I think these young kids on this list really kind of symbolize that. So that's really unfortunate.
Yeah.
Um, Now, in terms of what the other thing you were referring to of other, sort of unsolved mysteries, I guess, after this bombing, we have been getting some reports that some of the people who died in this bombing were not killed by the bomb itself, but instead by American machine gun fire. And I will say initially I was fairly skeptical of this. Somebody sent me a video of this local Afghan journalist who's interviewing a guy who I believe was some kind of volunteer or aid worker. And he says he is or used to be a military officer, I guess presumably in the Afghan military. And this guy says that he had seen the bodies of some of these victims of the bombing, and that he says they were clearly killed by bullets, that they had gunshot wounds in their heads and their necks and their upper bodies, and that it looked like they were hit from some kind of elevated position, like just judging by like the angle of the wounds and the exit wounds and stuff. And this guy claims that all but 20 of the victims were actually shot by American soldiers, not killed by the bombs. And so I heard that, and I didn't just completely dismiss the guy, as a liar or something, but I was sort of skeptical. I wasn't just going to take this one person's thing at his word. However, then I saw this BBC report where they're now citing multiple witnesses who say the exact same thing, that foreign soldiers guarding the airport fired into the crowd and killed people after this bombing. One of the guys they interviewed said that it may have been American or Turkish troops, but he also mentioned sort of how the bullets were coming from above, like as if from one of the guard posts, like an elevated position. Then there was another guy they had spoken to, and he said how
Will, can I just add real quick
Sure.
that when somebody was shot outside of the Kabul airport last week, they actually reported it was a member of the Afghan armed forces, and so I believe that there are. I guess I actually saw an article. Maybe the Red Brigade of the Afghan National Army is still formed up and is helping to provide this security. I have no idea what the long-term plan for these guys is. My guess is
Right.
they're going to be on the planes headed out of the country, but maybe the U.S. They're so in some way okay with the Taliban because obviously they're providing some of the security at the airport and everything. But
Yeah.
it is possible, I guess, that these were Afghan forces. It's not like it's only American and Turkish forces still at the airport.
Right, absolutely. Yeah, it's not totally clear that like just even if it was an airport security guard who did shoot, it's not necessarily clear it was an American. There are other nationalities still around there. However, there was another guy that they spoke to with the BBC, and he said that like he knew one of the guys who was killed after this, and the quote was something like the reason he lost his life, he was not killed by the Taliban, he was not killed by ISIS, and then the quote kind of gets garbled, but it sounded like he said U.S. Army started shelling or shooting. It's not totally clear what he said, but he's saying that like this was not a bomb that killed, somebody shot my friend after this. And so there are some witness reports that that somebody was shooting into this crowd that was not ISIS. According to the Pentagon, like after the bomb went off, there was some small arms fire from some unknown enemy position. So it's not totally implausible to think that maybe these American forces shot back. However, we also then have this Politico journalist, Laura Seligman, and she cited 3 anonymous sources who said that the U.S. forces did return fire after the attack. And so we do have some reason to believe that they were shooting into this crowd. And by U.S. forces, I'm not sure. Maybe, like you said, maybe she could mean like allied forces, but definitely we have some indication that this happened. And besides the BBC, though, almost nobody in the Western media seems to be interested in figuring this out, like and asking this question. Now, Idris Ali of Reuters, who we cite on this show quite a bit, he does pretty good work for a mainstream journalist. He did ask the Pentagon press secretary about this during a recent briefing. He just asked, is it possible that any U.S. Marines shot or killed Afghans after this bombing? And John Kirby didn't deny it. He said that, like, we can't confirm that, but he said, quote, certainly we're not in a position to deny it either. And so, I'm not sure how likely it is that we will ever get an admission or a official explanation of this. But at the moment, they are not denying that this happened. And we do have some pretty good indication that it did. So, definitely something that I would like to return to and keep looking into.
Certainly, if no U.S. forces shot on that day, I think John Kirby would have said no U.S. forces fired their weapons. And
That's correct, yeah.
It could have been that they shot into the air. Now, other things for people to just consider here before, you assume that was just like a mass slaughter situation. There was, 14 dead, 13 dead American soldiers, presumably. Some of them were either injured and about to die, or there's maybe other U.S. soldiers who were injured and later survived, right? And so, if you have them laying there bleeding out in this mass chaos, because people thought that there were 2 explosions at least, that was widely reported from sources on the ground, and so you had this mass chaos. You have what looks like a lot of people falling into like this sewage canal situation that was right next to where the bombing was, and there's some video that looks like maybe people were like drowned in there or crushed to death in that situation. But so if you do have injured soldiers laying there and like a stampede of people are coming towards them, somebody opens fire. I wouldn't be surprised if somebody did that in that situation. It's still horrible, but this is just like the absolute chaos of war and why you don't do this kind of stuff in the first place. I also think it's possible that maybe somebody in the crowd either had a weapon or looked like they had a weapon, or for whatever reason somebody thought they had a weapon. Once people start shooting, then maybe somebody else is like, oh, somebody like thinks that actually that the other side is shooting, so they, what I mean, these kind of things happen, these high elevation, when people are like so adrenaline, fight or flight, and who knows how many of these guys have like actually seen combat or anything before. It could have been like their first experience in something like this. Also, maybe like
they're all young.
Even like a Taliban fighter or something, like coming up to see what's going on, has a gun and somebody starts firing into the crowd. There's just so many options of what could have possibly happened here, and we have no answers because the Western press doesn't seem at all interested in the lives of Afghans ever, really. And so the U.S. soldiers that died, we had to get retribution and justice for them. But let's say some Afghans died at the hands of U.S. soldiers, or hell, like today, usually the articles you gotta like get 4 or 5 paragraphs into them before they even mention that civilians died.
That's right.
And these are children, the people that we should be, protecting the most in our society. Will, anything about this? Again, I don't think you're saying that this story is confirmed to be true. You're just, and I was very dismissive of it as first too, and then you had kind of filled me in on what you found, and particularly the Politico report, and what John Kirby said makes me think that this maybe is something that could have, and even if it wasn't, he said 20 people died, there's 170 dead, and I don't know if 150 people were shot to death by the U.S., but it could have even been just a couple. Is still absolutely tragic and disturbing.
Yeah, I mean, like, definitely, like you said, I'm not arguing this is definitely a confirmed thing. I'm also wouldn't even if it were confirmed, I would not say this is a deliberate massacre or something. I think it would have been just total, an effect of just the confusion of the situation and all that. But yeah, I definitely am very interested to figure out more about this. I did reach out to the Afghan journalist who initially talked to the aid worker where this claim, where I had initially seen it. I have not gotten a response from them yet, but I will definitely, keep you guys updated if I hear more.